This episode of Monty's Minute is brought to you by Audible. For a free 30-day trial and to get a free book, just head on over to audible.com/Gamebreaker. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Monty's Minute. This is episode number 23 for March 5th, 2013. I'm Gary Gannon, and joining me, as always, Mr. Monty Sharma. How are you, sir?
Great, Gary. I just can't believe it's already March.
I know it's already March. This is your busy season. This is almost like Christmas season for you. It's just all the conferences coming up and all the craziness. And you got the game jam thingy coming up, and
it's insane, and everybody likes to wait to the last minute. So we're getting, a dozen questions every day of, oh, I know you sent me 8 emails, but what did you mean by this? So,
well, we've got a dozen questions, and maybe we can answer a few of them this week. Let's start off with wasn't a question that came in or anything, but what did you think about the PS4 announcement? What was your takeaway?
I thought it was kind of cool, and just staying at sort of the high level of the business side, I sort of heard 3 things in it. The big thing of them being developer-centric, and really what they were saying was, we're sorry about the cell processor. That's exactly what it was. A really innovative chip design. It had lots of potential, but it was really hard to work with. We ported our SDK over to PS3, and when we were doing it, we thought, oh, well, you only have you get a budget from a game company. They say you're allowed to have, this many MIPS, this much bandwidth, this much memory. And we, okay, so we got to cut the memory usage way down, but we should be okay on processor because they're not using any of these special purpose processors. Well, it turns out that half the stuff we wanted to do, you had to run on the main processor and the main core. So it became, if you really worked it, you could do something really neat with it. But it was hard. Most people weren't willing to do that. And so it made PS3 development harder than expected, to be honest. So, they say, hey, look, we're going back to standard architecture so you can use your regular tool chains and things like that. So that's a big difference.
You think that hurt them in a lot of deals once the word got out amongst the developer community, as far as even getting more maybe exclusives and just games on the PS3?
Probably not, because they still have, a busload of money. So an exclusive is available at a price always. So, I'm sure that didn't cause them major problems. But it did probably impact, hey, I'm going to do something special for PS3 or for smaller devs. And, one of the areas they really did lag was compared to Xbox Arcade and sort of the energy around indie development for Xbox. They didn't get that. And that was sort of the second thing I was hearing of, look, we're still going to be more open than Xbox. So we want to get more developers on. We're going to make it simpler. And that's going to be kind of cool as well. And that was, it was sort of tongue-in-cheek. Well, it was sort of weird when they were saying that, hey, we're still going to sell physical products in the stores, but you'll be able to pull it all down digitally as well, which was kind of interesting.
I took that away as you're talking about games in particular, right? I mean,
yeah.
aren't we basically, this is our training wheels for the PS5 of, all digital? Like, they've got to bridge that gap a little bit, not just like jump head over heels.
Yeah, it's the first step in that direction. It's get people used to it. You're absolutely right. And then, bit by bit, they have to figure out what they do with GameStop, because, and sorry for the folks who aren't in the U.S., GameStop's the biggest game retailer here. I know there's other stores in the U.K. and all that. But for any of the dominant retail establishment, the game developers are really torn with this. On one hand, we'd like to stop them from selling used games. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, we need the flashy displays in store We need somebody hyping things and getting people to pre-order and all of that. So, they're trying to come to some sort of, detente in that whole area.
Do you think? Do you think that that's just a matter of time though before that even that edge of the end of the marketing goes away? Because I mean, look at the music industry, right? Like nobody cares about going to like Best Buy to buy CDs or anything. You don't.
No.
So there is no brick and mortar anymore for that, and that does fine.
But
they're gonna have to find.
Trained.
Right, they're gonna.
Right?
So, do you think we're probably gonna see, like as you said, like games? I would almost imagine that through the lifespan of the PS4, if you really pay close attention to it, most people won't even see the change. But I would almost imagine you'll probably see this slow transformation throughout the entire life cycle of them training you more and more digital only, and more games just not even ending up on store shelves and finding a lot of different outlets to market on. You can send an email to contact@Gamebreaker TV if you'd like. We have lots of banner ad space as well as many shows and a couple million people watching. So, we're here for you.
That'd be great.
They have I heard they have a bus full of cash. So
yeah, and the last thing that was neat was the use of Gaikai. So Gaikai, it used to compete with Otoy and OnLive about, hey, we're going to run the game on a server inside of a data center, and we're just going to send down a thin data stream. And so you'll get this up, and you can run it on anything. So I've played these games on iPads, iPhones, Google tablets, all that sort of thing. And when it works well, it's really good. I know if you're a hardcore gamer, there's still that little fractional latency you don't love. But if you're not playing a Twitch game, if you were playing Civ or XCOM or anything like that, it works as well as having it local. I played the whole Dawn of War series on it.
Let me ask you: is the Gaikai technology that they're utilizing? Are they using it in a way that they were traditionally? The same thing with what was the other company doing cloud gaming? Like, are they doing? Are those titles, those games that you're playing, even going to be on the PS4 with using the Gaikai service? Are they sitting on data centers coming through, or is the game actually sitting on your PS4 and you're only transferring the data from your PS4 to your tablet?
Yeah, it's coming from the data center, so it's only it's only that stream, and that actually impacts countries where they don't have great bandwidth, countries with who charge for the the amount of usage and things like that. And so one of the things Gaikai really started out doing, and they were really clever about it, was look, instead of getting somebody to download 5 gig for a 10-minute demo, let them play the actual game live for 10 minutes off one of the servers. And, back in the day, the pricing was like 1 cent a minute. So it'll cost you 10 cents for a user to try out your game. And I'm sure they've gotten more efficient over time. So Sony has, when we were talking about sort of the GameStop and the hype thing, well, we can let you play, these demos. Demos become that much more powerful. It isn't the, oh, I want the demo, go away for a week, come back, play the demo for 10 minutes, and go, all right. You get the demo right away, you play it, it's the full game, and if you want it, you can keep playing it while it downloads in the background, download it later, things like that. Not that they said they were going to do those are just suggestions.
Let me ask you this, I know I want to get off this, we got a bunch of questions to get on, but I am curious. You brought up GameStop, and if you had to guess and speculate, what do you think is going to happen to GameStop and the brick and mortars that sell games?
They're really in an interesting position. So they bought Congregate. They bought, what was it? Infernal, something like that, from the guys who made from Stardock, which was a Origin Steam competitor kind of thing, a store. And so in digital revenues for Congregate, or digital revenues for GameStop for last year have been way up. They're really taking off. So they're working really hard to make the transition themselves. And I'm sure they're looking at umpteen dozen options of what do we do with this real estate footprint? Do we turn it into more sort of demo centers, more marketing things and less inventory? What other things can we do to really turn this into a key component to marketing? Any title, so we also keep that.
So that's interesting. So you actually think that they could keep all those footprints, the brick and mortar stores, and just turn them into basically demo stations where they would market, people coming in to then do sign up for the pre-orders right then and there. I
Yeah,
mean,
there's a movement in online retail that they call sort of showrooming,
mhm.
and it's a sort of thing of I actually went to a Barnes and Noble last weekend. First time I've been inside of a bookstore is since I got my first iPad, right? And I'm the kind of guy who loves books, reads a lot, always buying things, and I just was missing walking around the bookstore. Now,
Mhm.
I read it on my iPad. I use the Kindle app. It works great across all of the, I don't know, 6, 7 devices I have it wired to right now. Um, and if I could have walked through, looked at books, and left them 50 cents for each book I looked at to say thanks, if they had a QR code there that said, hey, if you like this book, go ahead and download it. And, it's delivered in the way you want, but you get the bookstore experience. And so, think about that for music. Like every time I went to get a CD, I don't know, about a year ago or so, any band that was new that I was interested in, I'd go in, hey, do you have these guys? Oh, no, we're all sold out, but I can get one to you in 2 weeks. Well,
Mhm.
hell, I can get one by Thursday. And so, they have to switch to the look, we're going to run music events. We're going to showcase music. We are really going to be the place you want to hang out if you love music.
You really think so?
And
They have to go more down like an events route than almost anything.
I think that, well, that's one of the options. All of
Do
and
you
this
think
isn't my genius. This is other people's genius. I'm quoting.
is it a possibility that they would just close the brick and mortar altogether and just go straight
Yeah.
online?
No, a bunch will close because they won't have, the economics will stop working. There's not enough people in that store's catchment area that are going to pay for it. So, that whole transition is going to be it's going to be a painful one, but people still like to shop. And there's the sort of, in this weekend, I went to the bookstore because I felt like doing something. I didn't have anything big going on. And what am I going to do? Well, normally I would have gone to a bookstore. So find a way to take my money for looking at your stuff, but not buying it from me. That's what they got to do.
Interesting, interesting, interesting. All right, now some other things you wanted to follow up on this week. You were looking at some courses online. You were talking about.
Yeah.
We had a
So
question a
we
few
get
weeks
at
back. We get asked a lot about people like wondering, like, "Hey, should I take this online course? Should I do this? Like, is this worth it?" And
yeah. So if you're out there, you have a degree, or you've got some work experience, and you're saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about switching from this job to this job." Look at things like Coursera. It's Coursera. Coursera's came out of Stanford, I believe, and it's a whole bunch of college courses that they put on for free. Um, Look at iTunes U and look at edX. All of those things, like last year, I was interested in iOS development. And so I went and I pulled off iTunes University, the Stanford course on how to do iPhone development. They gave me the live lectures. They gave me the homework. They gave me the walkthrough of the homework. So I could see where I went wrong, and I could compare their code to my code. All of that sort of stuff. And some of these courses will actually even let you write the exams, and they peer mark them. That means somebody else in the course marks your paper, and you mark somebody else's paper. But you really, it's an amazing thing in terms of what you can learn from the best educators in the world. So, if you're thinking about, hey, I'm going to pay some place, well, why don't you go to Stanford, go to MIT, go to, I took a course from Wharton School of Business, and awesome, great lecturers, really good content. And this is one of the things that's really scaring, actually, higher education, is there's a lot of talk that there's a bubble in higher education. So, my daughter's a senior, and we're looking at places that want $50,000 to $56,000 a year for her to go there. Now, there's no ROI on that. There is really, and especially if somebody gets a teaching degree or an arts degree, I mean, forget about it. You're just never going to see that money again. Now, if you start learning because you took a course from Princeton, and and then what's coming up is this thing called competency-based learning, which you show you know it, and then they give you credit for it. So, if you're somebody who can learn on their own and you don't need somebody putting a gun to your head, there are just so many really awesome resources out there right now that you ought to take advantage of.
So write that one down, Coursera. I never heard of that one. I looked at some of the iTunes U stuff, and there's actually some really good stuff on there. So do some digging.
Yeah.
All right, let's do some questions. First up this week, Mr. Rock Lobster sends in a question now and again. He's got a very simple one this week, but actually a very good one that might have a lengthy answer in and of itself. Rock wants to know, what does a producer do?
Yeah, so Rock's our friend in Afghanistan.
Yep.
And last time I blithely said, hey, when you're getting out of the military, a producer would be a good role for a former military person. And then I skipped over the rest of it. So he wrote back and he said, all right, so what do you mean? And so, let's talk about it, because we talk about producers a lot. And there's different levels of producers. So there's the executive producer, and the executive producer is really the person who's in charge of the IP. So they're the ones who are making sure that this franchise is going where it's supposed to go. They're working on deals. They tend to be very externally facing. And so they're working on deals. They're working on marketing stuff. They're doing lots of promotional things. That's the executive producer. They have sort of the top job for that IP. Then there's a producer who either runs a game or they'll run part of a game, and sometimes if they're running part of a game, it's called an associate producer. So what the producer does is well, let's take the associate producer. You're working on one subset of a game, and if you're working within Agile, which is the development methodology most developers use these days, there's a team that's assigned to you, and it may have artists, engineers, QA, other things like that. With that team, you take instructions from the executive producer and the lead producer on the game, who say, all right, this is what we're going to build. That gets broken down to saying, okay, these are the things we need, and this team's responsible for the combat mechanic. This team's responsible for network layer stuff. This one's doing back end. This, and it gets even more granular than that. So with your team, you work out what is it you can do. So what are, you break it down into even smaller pieces. And, it depends on the place, but you break it down to work that takes less than a couple of days to do. And that way, you know exactly where you are in terms of progress of a thing, because at worst, you're off by 2 days. So you know what's going on. You learn these things. And so the producer then works between the other producers who are running different subsystems and their team, making sure they have what they need. They know what's going on. They're getting all the right feedback, all sorts of stuff like that. So very important job, great for somebody who's detail-oriented, very good at sort of, the important thing is a producer, you're not the boss. You are somebody who has to peer manage. You have to work with people as equals and get them on the right page, make sure they have the right information.
I mean, would you say it's fair to say that, in other positions in corporations that they're kind of like a manager to some extent?
Yeah, so I'd say they're kind of like a product manager. So the product manager's role, and that's how I came up through the ranks, is, hey, you're talking to marketing on one side and you're talking to engineering on the other side. And so you're the part in the middle that tries to translate what marketing's telling you into actual things that need to be built. And then you're trying to translate what engineering's telling you into what marketing's allowed to say and what they're not allowed to say.
Basically, you get to hear both sides of all the swearing and yelling at the two sides of the teams, because they both have different agendas, and then you've got to interpret them both. Now, within that, that's like a main producer, right? But am I wrong in saying that also there are then more producers that are even more granular than that? I mean, you've got like content producers, or you've got like different, even more creative specific producers and things like that.
And they'll break down the art that needs to be done. They'll have teams that are working on the next release. They'll have teams that are working on, hey, here's a new concept we want to do. Okay, so let's break out a few teams, and we're going to have these guys work on the conceptual stuff. We're going to have these guys lay out some base and pull it together and show it. And the really neat thing with this development methodology is you work in what are called sprints. And at the end of the sprint, everybody shows their demo, which means my team was supposed to do these things and let me show you it working. And so that's kind of neat. But what it has done, which is tough on some people, is now game developers are running with, it used to be you'd have one development build, you'd have a staging build, and you'd have a production build. Now they're running with 15, 20 different development builds. And it's a little more complex knitting things together, but it works much, much better.
All right, let's go next up. This one in from Jack. Jack says, hey guys, love the show. Look forward to it every week. Keep up the great work. Says, I was wondering what you guys thought of smaller game engines such as RPG Maker, Game Maker, etc., and how making a game in those could help a person like myself get into the game industry. I have no artistic talent and very little programming ability, but I am very design orientated and have found myself able to use these engines and make something playable and that people have found interesting. Can using an engine with built-in art and sound assets and very minimal, if any, programming required help you show a game company that you are competent enough to design a game? So what do you think? We haven't talked about either of those. I don't think RPG Maker or Game Maker have ever come up.
And there's other ones like Game Salad and a few other ones. There's a bunch of them. They're free. They come with templates. They come with some art, all of that sort of thing. And so the interesting things is these engines are actually getting much better. And I know a couple of indies who, it's a designer and an artist. Neither one of them can code. And they'll use Game Maker and they'll actually put out a version of a game. And so they're building on this. So, if you want to learn the game industry, and, we've talked about going to game jams and all of that, go there, build something in these. And the hardest thing in the game is to find that fun. What is it that links the game mechanic together in such a way that you really want to play it? So, back in the old Atari days, there were not great graphics, there was no storyline, but these games were still really engaging, and they had found that fun. So if you're able to do that, and you can do that, on a repeatable basis or fairly regularly, that's something that a game company will respect and say that, all right, that's interesting. Now, we're not going to give you a senior role, but maybe we let you in the door to try something. So, well worth doing it. I know a lot of game programs use tools like this, especially in their early courses when students don't know enough programming to, hey, let's learn design principles by using these tools.
Yeah, because there are a bunch of people within the video game industry that don't know how to program. Like, they're not all just, there's different teams for everything. So, yeah, take some of these tools and kind of build it around what you feel like you're talented at.
Mm-hmm. And if he sounds like a good designer, so go ahead and design.
Next up, this one in from Elliot. Elliot says, this is a juicy one. I hope you're ready for this one, Monty. Says, what are your thoughts on the way Aliens Colonial Marines was handled, such as the discrepancies in the press demo and the actual release, and having 4 game studios developing a single game? We just actually wrote up a very lengthy article today on this with a lot of there's a lot of quotes out there from Gearbox and the other company, and it sounds like this really got mixed up in the shuffle quite a bit.
Yeah, and I don't know the whole story behind it. It seems well, all right, on the positive side, let's start on the positive side. You're going to see differences from press demos to launch code. And I watched the video that he'd attached, and as I watched the video, I saw some things where they used different lighting systems, and that was probably had more to do with efficiency, or they liked the mood it created better. The renders were different in some places. In some places, there were objects or creatures missing, and what's happening in that process. So a press demo is usually, is supposedly nailed down or branched off the main code a month or two before the actual press demo. So if you're a big company and you've got something like E3 coming up, you've got all right, we're going to do this as our demo. So you need to script out what the demo is. And then you have a team who's working on making sure all of that stuff works. And you're doing a very careful walkthrough of just the things that work. And that ends up being, an early stage press demo. So while that's happening, you've got the rest of the company or multiple studios who are working on getting all of the other systems going, and they're making decisions. They're coming back and they're saying, hey, at this point in time, we're finding the players, they don't get what's happening. We need to lose this. We need to add something here. This isn't visible enough. All these things are going on, and they're making changes. And that keeps going on until they get, well into their open beta. So by the time, when you get to open beta, all of your systems are in place. All of your core systems are in place, and you're looking to see what do you need to tweak, tune, change, where are there bugs, where are there problems. That's all they do during the beta period. So at that point in time, the storyline's set, everything else is set. A lot of times, again, for beta, they'll carve off a part of the final game, so you don't see everything because they know this works and that's fine. Here, let's just get you to test these things. So that's the process they go through. And so, I generally don't look at press demos because, they are what they are. They're a suggestion. Well, in the movie industry, the trailer is not always.
Well, isn't this is like, I think I'm trying to remember this right, and this goes way back, but it wasn't this whole story. This isn't a video game company, obviously, but I believe when Steve Jobs was with Next, and they had the Next computer, and they had to do that conference, and the big thing with Next was it was going to be geared towards the motion graphics and editing and video editing and things like that, like really high-end graphics. And they were waiting for these like super high-end cards or something to come in to be able to do some of this graphic stuff. They didn't come in. And at the last minute, they literally hook up a Laserdisc player. This is the story anyways, that they hook up a Laserdisc player basically to the monitor and just play a Laserdisc. And they went on at the conference and just, did the whole thing. And everybody thought the computer was crunching it, and it really wasn't. And hey, some of this stuff is smoke and mirrors. And a lot of these... and like you said, with film industry does a lot of the same thing. A lot of the times to get funding, to raise money, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. A lot of the times to just be able to prove to people like, hey, we've got something here. Just that's kind of business to some extent, isn't it?
No, absolutely. I mean, I have done a billion demos in my life. I mean, in fact, most places I'm at, that becomes part of my role. And the main reason is I always have a plan B. Here's the demo. We test it. We know the careful path we need to walk. And, especially in early development, you're rebooting your machine. You're making sure all other programs are turned off. You've got this build, and you go through a very careful set of steps to make it work. And even then, sometimes it blows up. And if you lose your cool when it blows up, people begin to doubt you. And so you've just got to keep it together and keep moving forward. And then, when you're done, you wait till you're out of that building. You get on the phone, you call engineering, say, "What the hell?"
You freak out and you fire people.
Yeah, it's not supposed to work that way. Yeah. So, that's the problem. So what have you heard publicly as to why they split into multiple studios?
There's a really lengthy article right on the front page of Gamebreaker right now. You guys can go read it. I don't have all the exact specifics, but basically it looks like they bought the IP, kind of sat with it for quite a while. I think in that time frame, Gearbox really took off with Borderlands 2. They were also looking at Duke Nukem. I think they kind of didn't really look too much at the Aliens IP. The other company, I forget the name of the company. Was it Take? I don't know. It wasn't Take Two. No, not Take-Two. I can't remember the name of the company. But the other company working on it, they put a bunch of resources into it. They started working on it, and they built a bunch of stuff out. And then basically at the last minute, Gearbox came in and kind of looked at what they were building out. Gearbox, I think apparently, if I get this right, I could be getting this wrong. I think Gearbox was working on the multiplayer component. Another company's working on the single player. They showed Gearbox the single player stuff, and Gearbox said, "Oh, this is all wrong. We need to start over. Lighting, shaders, and really tried to jump in And basically, I know the one quote from a Gearbox employee says, like, if the game feels like it was made in 9 months and it was rushed, it's basically because that's exactly what happened. It was. So it wasn't really developed over all these years. It was basically like 9 months ago. They all freaked out, scrambled, and started rushing. I think there was, I want to say there might have been 4 companies involved, kind of shuffling this back and forth. Also, they're saying, just too many cooks in the kitchen. And just rushing stuff, just kind of got mismanaged.
No executive chef in the kitchen.
Yeah. So it sounds like it really got kind of mixed up at the last minute. A lot of money's already involved. And they need to get something out the door, or they're in big trouble.
So there's 2 things that sort of drive what happened there, and I don't know the truth behind it. I'm absolutely willing to believe that story. The 2 things that tend to happen to companies is, projects, when you get towards the end, all of a sudden require all hands on deck. So even though you carefully planned out, I only need 1/3 of my people to do this, when it comes to, okay, we've got a ship date, and we talked before about, look, when marketing puts that, a line in the sand that says we're going to ship, they start spending millions of dollars to get it out on that day, months before that. So as you approach that date, what happens is you start pulling people from everywhere. You will pull them off other game teams, and so another game will languish and sit there, and they'll still be talking to folks. Oh yeah, that game's coming along great. We got one guy kind of working on it. But that's what's happening, and then you hit the point. You go, we can't do it all. All right, outsource. What can we do to outsource?
Yeah.
Well, these guys can do this part. These guys can do this part, and that is a really tough thing to manage.
I'll give you a really, really quick. It's a really interesting article. Yeah, I should all go read it, because it's like, so James goes into it here. He goes back to 2006 when Sega purchased the rights to make 2 games with the Alien IP. So an RPG with Obsidian and an FPS with Gearbox. 2009 comes along. Sega announces that they're having major financial troubles, and they lose the RPG title from Obsidian, and that was canceled. And then it was 2009 Gearbox blows up with Borderlands. That hits the market, which they didn't have. They got all kinds of success, and the company went full steam ahead to get Borderlands 2 going to release in 2012 with hardly any staff remaining on the Aliens title. So Gearbox outsources the title to the developers of the title Section 8 with Timegate Studios. So it's a whole kind of spiraling out of control turn of events here of popularity and.
Well, it's a thing of Sega, when they bought those rights, they might have gotten timed rights that you have to do the work by this point in time. So you've got 3 years, 5 years, whatever. So when they get into financial trouble, and they go selling things off, or they, partner in odd ways, you're put under a lot of pressure. You have to get it out at a certain time. And then if I'm Gearbox, and I'm not saying this is what they did, but if I'm Gearbox, I make way more money on my game than an IP I license from somebody else. Like hugely more money. So when Borderlands blows up, what is the number one thing I can do to make sure my company does well? Borderlands 2. And I got to make sure it's really good. And if I take a beating on this third-party IP, I take a beating on this third-party IP because I could always do Borderlands 3. And that's the kind of decision that gets made because you're under the gun with time, you only have so much money, and you're trying to maximize your return.
Always insightful, Mr. Sharma. If you guys have questions for Monty, you can send them over to monty@gamebreaker.tv. Send in your questions. We're not getting video. We need some video questions. Yeah. Guys, record yourself on YouTube and send us the link. Ask us a question. You got a question for Monty. Send that also to monty@gamebreaker.tv. Keep it like 30, 60 seconds tops. We don't want some 30-minute question. But yeah. Monty, you can follow. What's up?
No, I was going to say, first video question that comes in, I'll send you a t-shirt.
Oh, look at that.
But I'll send some.
Maybe a worn old t-shirt from,
Who knows?
Follow Monty on the Twitter at Monster, MONTSTER27. Send him an email at monty@gamebreaker.tv and come here every single Tuesday at 3 PST for the live show. We're doing these live now, so come on over. Don't forget, you can follow me at Gary Gannon. You can follow Gamebreaker TV at Gamebreaker TV. And we will see you next week for more Monty's Minute. Have a great week, everybody.
See you, Gary.
See you, Monty.